and the presentation that we will be using here today. I have my colleague Tupac in front of me who will also keep track of the questions. We'll get there. So before we start, some small points for this meeting. We noticed that it's good if you turn off the camera and definitely mute the microphone when you're not speaking in this meeting. If you have any small, quick questions, you can put them in the Q&A in the chat, and Tupac will answer them. That might be easiest. But if you do feel there are things that we need to discuss, we would say we can take some time for questions after each chapter, and you can raise your electronic hand, and Tupac will also let me know. And as I said, so this meeting will be recorded, and afterwards, if there are parts that you enjoyed very much, you can watch them again later as many times as you want. Okay. So here we go. What is the content of this info session? So yeah, what we don't want to do is just really repeat the call or what is in there. We really want to give some tips and some more advice on the content of a proposal and how to go about it. I try to explain some of the things that Vliegewest expects of you as proposal writers. We start with small part on the support from our side. At KU Leuven's side, our team provides a lot of support. I will explain that a bit. Then the basics of the call, and also the vision of Vliegewest for these kind of collaborations. Then the different formats and the selection criteria that will be used. And we'll go through it in quite some detail. So for the Word document, for example, we will quickly go through all the questions to give you an idea of this is what Vliegewest expects. And also these are the kind of things that we see quite often, mistakes that you can avoid. Hope that helps. Then some words on the online tool for the project proposals. That means when you finalize your proposal, you want to submit it. There's an online tool for that. One slide with some general tips for proposal writing that might always be nice to keep in mind, and then some additional time and space for questions. Okay, I will start with our team. You can see 6 people here working at the international office at KU Leuven, and we try to divide proposals because the kind of support that we offer is as soon as you have an idea or you have any kind of questions or you have a draft, please contact us. The sooner the better. We will look at everything, give feedback, answer your questions, and if necessary, contact Vliegewest if things would not be clear. I'll briefly go through it. So Caroline Dinewet, she's specifically focusing on the collaborations with Flemish University of Applied Sciences and Arts. You can see the 5 of them that are in the KU Leuven Association. That is her speciality, her focus. Then you have Piet Vostin. He will follow up on the proposal with Asian partner countries. Ellen Verhofstadt and myself will be mostly following up on African partner countries. Laurens Rademakers for the Central African partners, so that's mostly DRC, Rwanda and Burundi, and then Tupac Alfat for the Latin American partner countries. If you're, I would say, already working on a proposal and you haven't been in touch yet with any of these colleagues, please do so as soon as possible so we know that there is a proposal coming and we can offer our support. This is both on the content and form and any kind of questions. Then one additional aspect, maybe there are some people here that would like to write a proposal but haven't found a promoter at KU Leuven yet. This can be quite challenging, especially if you don't have any contacts in advance, if you don't know anyone yet. You can ask one of the colleagues to help you, but I also have to advise you, if you don't have anyone yet by now, it might be very difficult. We see that professors get a lot of requests for all kinds of collaborations, and they may say, okay, yeah, there's not that much time left. I don't know this partner yet. I'm working on other proposals. This is not exactly my field, all these kind of things. So we can never guarantee that if you ask us, we will also find someone to work with you. If you'd like to have a look yourself, I've put 2 links here. Of course, I will share the presentation afterwards. Our KU Leuven research portal, where you can actually see all the research projects at KU Leuven. If you put your key terms in the search portal, you might find similar projects, and then if you see the promoter, the KU Leuven professor, you can look them up in the Who is Who and contact them directly or try it through us. Okay. Then I go to the call basics and the VLIR-OS vision. I suppose most people have had a look at the call. We can only advise you to look at it as well as possible, really read it thoroughly. But so you know that these projects are 2-year projects. They would start, if you get selected, 1st of September 2025, take 2 years, maximum budget of 70,000 euros. And it's always at least a partnership between 2 higher education institutions, one in Flanders, one in a partner country. Can be more, but at least this. If we try to kind of summarize in one sentence what we see as a condition to success for these kind of projects, and this is what we put here. You want to, by working together with higher education institutions, create some results that convince the selection committee that it's possible to have an impact, to make a difference outside of the higher education institution, that you can work towards, that you can contribute to real change, and then change in what field? Well, then it's always about this sustainable and equitable development, as mentioned in the Sustainable Development Goals. So that's the kind of things you're finally looking for. Okay. A quick word maybe about promoter eligibility. Did want to say that because there could be some confusion. In the call, you see that it's mentioned that a postdoctoral researcher could be a promoter. At KU Leuven, this is not the case. So a promoter needs to be a professor. There could be cases when the KU Leuven promoter is retiring during the project period. So if you make a proposal now within 2 years, then you already have to include a successor who will take over when the professor leaves, and they need to be taken up in the proposal as a co-promoter. And also very important to keep in mind, applicants on both sides can only be a promoter of maximum 2 projects, and that means if you already have a team project from the last call, that counts. If not, then it would be 2 applications for this call. Okay. And one final mention that we have to do, maybe you've heard about it, maybe not, but in Belgium, negotiations about our next government are still ongoing, and we have heard that if this coalition would be successful in formulating or forming a government, that there would be serious budget cuts in the domain of international cooperation, of development cooperation. It is very unclear at this point what the consequences would be for VLIR-OS and for these kind of collaborations, but VLIR-OS has stated again this week that this call will be continued for now. So if at a certain point this government is formed, if a decision is made that there is a huge budget cut, then it's still theoretically possible that that this call would be cancelled at a certain point. We have to say we don't know, but it's good for you to take that into account. This was my okay. We will go through a little bit with this one. If you have been looking at the call, you might have noticed this huge scheme, which is actually Vliegewes's theory of change. So let's say an abstract way of presenting how they believe these kind of projects can lead to, at the very top, I will take this laser pointer thingy, at the very top, that it can lead to sustainable development, to real changes, positive changes for society. And it doesn't click anymore. Okay, you can break this up in at least 4 parts. I want to just quickly go through this with you, so it's not so intimidating anymore or confusing. At the very bottom, they have some guiding principles that are derived from the Sustainable Development Goals thinking. I will mention them later and go into a little bit more detail. So the leave no one behind, the interconnectedness of the goals, and then multi-stakeholder partnerships are guiding principles that are, let's say, transversal throughout the whole project strategy and philosophy. So these are just foundational principles. Then when we come here to sphere of control, that means what do you control when you're executing a project, and what do you control? That is the direct activities, the way you use your money, your time, activities. And they have created 6 domains that you see here in 6 different colors. Any kind of activity that you might conceive of for a project will fit under one of these 6 domains. And when you have to, in your proposal, list all these activities, Vliegewes will also ask you for each of these activities to say what domain that is. Is it, for example, related to education? Is it about creating networks? Is it outreach? Is it about people? That means working on individual skills and knowledge, not of groups. So that's here on the very basic concrete level. When you go one step higher to the outcomes, this is something that will also come back. That means, yeah, what comes out if you have been doing these activities and if you have been doing them well, if they are successful, let's say, then some things come out. That's actually what you hope to achieve by the end of your project. Higher quality and needs-oriented research is one. There are several individuals that apply new knowledge. All these kind of things can be outcomes. Vliegewes will ask to what outcomes your project is contributing. You don't have to have all 6 of them, that's not necessary, but you have to say which one. And I think it's very good to mention, this is a bit of a crucial outcome, number 5. It's called enhanced conditions for the uptake of new knowledge, applications, or services. It's actually where you make the step from what has been happening in your higher education institution, how that can make the step to outside of the higher education institution. How do you use the results from your project, or how do you put them at the disposal of users outside of the university? How do you translate findings to the larger community, to policymakers, etc., etc.? So this is a very crucial one for Vliegewes. And if, let's say, there is one of these outcomes that we would say you need to have in every project, then it is this number 5. So keep that into account. And when these outcomes have been successful, when you succeeded in having them, and if it worked, they're all about change, all about a situation that has changed. So the quality of research has gone up. That's new. Organizational systems have been improved. So it's all about change. If that worked, if there has been change, then the idea is this will lead to impact and sustainable development. It can go through either individuals that have new skills, and you will see here that are not only skilled but also act in a certain way. So they use these new skills, which is crucial in this process of change. If people get new skills, they don't use them, nothing will change. So that's crucial. And also on the other side, you've been creating new solutions, new agricultural techniques, or a new procedure in medicine, etc. If it is being applied, then it can contribute to sustainable development. Policies of a local government or national government that have been based on evidence, thanks to you, that leads to a positive change. So this is a bit the philosophy that FleetOS uses. Just a little bit more about these three guiding principles. Leaving no one behind might be clear. This is about more marginalized communities or individuals that get less opportunities, that has a lot of difficulty to benefit from any sustainable development, that you keep an eye on them, and that you it starts with analyzing this, with understanding it, with showing that you know this context and what is the additional barrier perhaps to go forward for these groups, and then that you're also keeping them in mind in your project strategy. Interconnectedness, this is more about let's say acknowledging the complexity of sustainable development, like keeping in mind that for example, progress in one goal might cause problems for other goals, or you need progress in one to have progress in another. They affect each other. So also when you make this context analysis, that it is they would say holistic, that you're not just focusing on one small issue without understanding the links it has with other challenges. This is also where, and I will come back to it later, where you should think about gender equality and environment as transversal themes for FleetOS. And then multi-stakeholder partnerships, so the idea of because of this complexity, because of the different strengths that different actors have, it's considered a big plus to work with the right partners, with other organizations, can be government, can be civil society, can be private sector, that have their own specialties, their own input, and that can help, especially in contributing to change outside of the higher education institution. There is a link here where you could have a look at the FleetOS website. They have listed some Belgian actors, civil society actors, that also have ideas for projects. It's always worth to have a look if that coincides with what you want to do in a certain place. It might be nice to contact them as well. Okay. So this is the domains that I already mentioned. I don't think we have to go into detail. This is so at activity level. For example, you are introducing a new teaching method, and you're organizing a training for staff to do that. Then that's an activity, and you are in education programs and methods, for example. Right, these are these 6 outcomes, what you hope, the changes that will start taking place because of your activities, because of your efforts. And FleetOS will ask to indicate for each of these outcomes whether or not they are relevant for your project. You don't have to do them all, as I said. And here is the impact level again. Okay. These were the first 2 chapters. If there are already any questions that you would like to ask now about these things, you're most welcome. If I have confused you very much, I'm happy to confuse even further. No? Nothing for now? Then I will continue. About the formats for a proposal and also the selection criteria. Maybe we start with the criteria so you can keep them in mind. You will see them in the call in more detail, also with some examples. Here, just the idea of they are from most important to least important, but they are all very important, because why did I put this A, B, C, D there? That's the score you get for every criteria. If for one criterion you score less than a B, so C or D, already the proposal will not be selected. So this is quite important. You cannot really say, okay, we can not pay too much attention to this because the rest is really good. You really have to consider it all. So relevance and coherence is the most important thing. Is this a relevant project in the context that you're working? So you can demonstrate this by showing that that what you're doing, the challenges you're working on, are in line with clear needs. If there are national policies, also university policies, that demonstrate that this is really a point of attention. And coherence, we'll go back to that, that you also take into account the actions of other organizations, other actors, that you're not doing the same or doing something else, going in against government policy, all these kind of things. The second is the quality of the project design. Is it a good project? Does it make sense? Can you convince a selection committee that this will actually work in that context? And that also requires quite a lot of understanding of the context that you're working on, of the challenge, and yeah, I won't go too much further. The third is the potential impact, and also the sustainability of that impact, of the effects that you have. Will all this fall apart after 2 years, or can you convince people that this will have a positive long-term effect, both in the institution and beyond? This is not always easy to demonstrate, of course. It's a small project, and you might need additional partners to help you guarantee some kind of sustainability. And it starts with this context of, is there a clear demand for what you're doing that already increases the potential for sustainability? And then the implementation setup is more practical, like did you make a good planning? How will you use your funding? Do you have a good mix of partners in place to achieve your goals? So these are the 4 selection criteria. Okay. Then just some tips, some things to keep in mind. I already mentioned these 2 transversal issues for Vliegewest: gender equality, and this is really something. It can work both in terms of the human resources that you will put in place for your project, but also, of course, the topic of your project and the impact it will have, who will be the people that will benefit. Did you have a look at how, for example, gender can make a difference in the challenge you're working on? For example, in the monitoring, will you keep track separately of the effect on men and women and see if there's a difference, just to show that you're sensitive to this possibility? So gender and environment as well. So maybe your project is not directly related to environment, but then still you can reflect on how it has an impact on environment and how you want to reduce that as much as possible. When we're talking about multi-stakeholder cooperation, so clearly this is very much appreciated by Vliegewest, but then you also have to make sure that it is convincing and there's a real cooperation, not just mentioning several organizations that are doing something similar, but really having clear roles, who will do what and why are they the best to do that, the complementary forces, why is that, and a strategy. This is also a question in the proposal. What strategy will you put in place to work with these stakeholders? How will you do it concretely? Then I've put 2 links in here. I really like this one. Let's see if it works. When you're working on your context, click it again. You will see that for every country, there is a great dashboard with the sustainable development scores, trends, the indicators. For example, if you want to look in more detail, so this is South Africa, good health and well-being. You can see, are things improving? Are they stalling? Are they going up or down? And you can find a lot of information that is really nice to use in any context analysis. So that's one thing I would definitely advise you to look at. If you're thinking about this interconnectedness, how are some of these goals interconnected in a certain place? This is also when now, for example, for Tanzania, Sustainable Development Goals, number 6, clean water and sanitation. And you can see in these pages, these are actors, main actors working on it. These are some projects, but what I wanted to show is here, okay, our work on clean water and sanitation is linked to these other sustainable development goals. It can give you some kind of inspiration if you're lacking any. Okay, just to say, FleetOS considers Agenda 2030 as the reference point, and there is a lot of information that you can use if you're looking for some. A general tip that is, we know, is always appreciated by FleetOS is to involve policymakers at a certain point if you want to create and sustain changes in society. If you have them on board is always a plus. And then also, if you involve them seriously. They do not appreciate when policymakers are involved at the very end of the project in one dissemination session where they receive all the results. If you really want to have them on board, you have to, from the start, as soon as possible, even if you do have good context, because that helps a lot, personal context, then even in the elaboration of your proposal, because they will feel that they have some ownership, that they are really involved, if possible. And then at any point, be concrete. It sounds very simple and straightforward, but we know from experience that becoming very concrete in what you want to do requires quite a lot of consultation, quite a lot of discussion, especially if you're in a multi-stakeholder cooperation. What do we really want to do? And do we all believe that that makes sense, and why? So yeah, we advise you when you're having meetings to try and come to these concrete agreements on what you want to do. Okay. Then the formats. There are 3 documents that you are required to submit. A Word document where you elaborate on the narrative proposal, you explain what you want to do, how, all these things. There's an Excel document where you can put the team members with a lot of information and the activities with their domains and the time when you want them to take place. So a planning document as well. And then there is the Excel document for the budget. So it's 3 documents, and it's good to already have a look at so you know what will be required and the kind of questions. What we always ask and advise is to work offline as long as possible, and only in the very end, if you have finalized all these drafts and documents, to then put them on the online submissions tool of FleetOS. When you share some of these documents with us to give feedback, that's way easier if it's a Word doc than if we have to go to the submission tool where you cannot add track changes and comments, etc., etc. So please keep it offline. Okay, so the narrative proposal, that is the biggest part, I think, of the work. You will see that every question has a maximum number of characters, I don't know. These include spaces. You can go a little bit beyond this limit, but only a little bit, and be careful, because if it's more than the allowed number of characters, it will not, you cannot put it in the online tool, and that is not something that you like to run into. when you're uploading that in the final days. So yeah, be aware of that. This template is made up of 8 modules, but one of them yeah, is not required. They don't use it anymore. So your space is limited because of these characters. So try not to repeat information and to put the right information in the right place. And this is also what we will be going through now. Really, because VLIROS writes difficult questions with several sub-questions in a question. So really, yeah, pay a lot of attention to how they ask it, and always, yeah, be as concrete as possible. We also know that selection committees do not like this if they don't really understand what is going on. As we say here, this selection committee, it doesn't consist of experts in your field. So really, what you write needs to be understandable for anyone. Don't use any terminology that only experts understand. It's important to keep that in mind. And I will share this afterwards. I will share this presentation, but also the colleagues have, and they get some thumbs up for that, have prepared an annotated version of the template where for every question you will see in the comments what is expected, and also sometimes to what selection criteria this belongs. I will share that with you as well. Okay. The first question, and very, very important, you have first a summary, of course. That is also very important because it's the first thing that the selection committee will read, and yeah, it really should grab their attention in a positive way and stimulate them to read on and to hear how are you going to do this, etc., etc. This context as much as possible. So you will explain the challenge that you will be working on, explain its complexity. As much as possible, make this an evidence-based context analysis. Maybe you can find some relevant figures that you can mention there that give people a very clear idea. Show them that you really know the context and the situation. So this is really teamwork. The more feedback you can get on this, the better. As we said, so refer to this Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, maybe the indicators there in the country that I just showed, but also any national or institutional frameworks, national plans, policies that show that this is an important and a relevant issue in the partner country. What are the authorities or any other big organizations doing right now or are not doing? This is very good to mention. And what we very, very often see is that people already start mentioning what the project is going to do about it. That's actually one of these examples of duplication. You can really use the space you get here to explain the context as much as possible. There is plenty of space later to explain what the project is going to do. So try to avoid doing that in the context analysis. It's also good, if possible, if you can make a stakeholder analysis. That means, well, who is affected by this challenge, who is involved, and then with these principles of leaving no one behind, extra attention for vulnerable people or marginalized communities, anything, and interconnectedness. So also gender and the environment, how does it come into play? This interconnectedness also, they say, okay, how are there any positive and negative trade-offs in the issues you're working on? That means, for example, okay, maybe you can be working much more intensively in agriculture, but it has a certain negative trade-off on, I don't know, certain environmental issues, and show that you're aware of this, but you still choose, okay, to go through. It strengthens your context analysis. All right. The second context question is about the partner institution or partner institutions. This is, I think, a good example of these questions to really read them carefully. There are several things in there. Vliegewest expects you to analyze the partner institution in the sense that, okay, there's certain strengths and certain weaknesses. It's good to focus on the unit or the department you're working with, because otherwise it becomes too big. And then how will you work with this as concretely as possible? How will you strengthen teaching or research or any other issue at the partner institution? What will the project do? And then, possibly based on previous experiences, try to indicate to what extent this institution has the potential to have impact outside of its own walls. What they also ask is to discuss a shared ownership of the project or the topic. How can you demonstrate that, and what can guarantee the long-term effects? Well, anything you can find, like an institutional strategic plan, or maybe some spear points of research, or the mission of the university that says, okay, it is crucial for us to have an impact maybe on these or these regional issues. It only strengthens, it provides a kind of proof for what you're trying to do. So you can reflect on that. Okay. Then module 2, that's, I think, the biggest module, where you really explain the strategy and the theory of change of your project. Just this issue, theory of change, what is it? It's just your theory of how things can and will change because of what you're doing. How do you expect this can happen? You will be asked in an impact statement why you're doing this project, for whom exactly, who will benefit from this. Then in the second part, what exactly do you want to achieve? So by the end of the project, this should be in place in order to have a success. And the third question is, okay, how concretely are you going to do that? And it mirrors a bit, you remember in this theory of change, you had this impact level, this outcome level, and this activity level with the 6 domains. Well, that's the same levels that you have here. Okay. Okay, so it starts with asking for this impact statement. Impact is really something that is beyond the duration of your project. It is a kind of dream that you have together about a positive change in society. Of course, it has to be in line with your context analysis, where you said, okay, we see this and this and this as a problem, so we hope that it will evolve in this direction, and I would put it achievable in 15 years. So you can imagine it is not the expectation of Vliegewest that on your own in such a project you will solve a complex societal challenge. It will take a long time, and you need many other actors, stakeholders, and all kinds of contextual changes will take place. So you can accept and acknowledge this complexity, but you need to demonstrate what you want to contribute to, what you hope, let's say, will happen. This is a small example of what an impact statement can look like. That's very small. So a certain specific group with a positive change and how that impacts an aspect of sustainable and equitable development. Okay. Then we go to what do you want to achieve? That's this level of the outcomes. What kind of changes do you hope will have started by the end of your project? I go, this was this one, yeah. The 6 possible outcomes at individual level and at higher education institutional level. Okay. So you explain it actually for each outcome, kind of mention how this project will contribute to it. And here you're asked to also already pay attention to sustainability. How will all these things keep on working after the end of the project? For example, you've been paying someone in the project to do certain activities. Yeah, the project is over. These people will not be able to do the same thing anymore. What will happen? Why can you believe that it does have a certain sustainable aspect? I just want to mention that in the last short initiative call, there were 2 additional questions here on the conditions for uptake and these 3 SDG principles, but they've taken that out in this call. So we have a bit more space here to really go into sustainability, because it's quite often a remark we see from selection committees. But it's also extremely difficult. There are no real easy answers for sustainability in these kind of small projects. But okay, you can also always ask us for advice for a very specific case. That's easier than in general saying things, because it's easy to say that you should find additional funding, or that you want other actors to take over. But that's easy to say, but in reality, not that easy to achieve. And it needs to be convincing. It needs to be realistic, of course. Then the how, you have quite some space there. You're really going to refer to concrete activities that you will be doing. Make it convincing, make people believe, because yeah, you want them to believe that if you do all this, it will really lead to a certain change. And you might have to explain a little bit why you can believe that from other evidence, some other research, or from other experiences. Because it's not necessarily the case that, for example, when you train people in a certain new skill, that they will also use it for many different reasons. It can be motivation, it can also be the context, it can be a lack of material or funding, or all these kind of things. So think about it. That's also a bit what the cartoon is saying. Very often in people's minds, it's clear how it will all work out, but it's not on the paper. So you mentioned a lot of activities, and then it's actually up to the selection committee to imagine how that can lead to a real change. Try to avoid that. Try to make it convincing and logical, of course. This question that I just said had been taken out from the previous question, has been added here, and it's an important one. It's about this outcome 5, about obtaining that outcome 5 of uptake, of the link between the higher education institution and the end users, in a way, or the beneficiaries. How are you going to do that? How are you going to approach this? How are you going to make sure that the results of your project will be relevant for people outside of your institution? So really do mention it there. And it might take certain elements of translation, for example. You cannot just publishing an article on an agriculture technique will have zero impact, of course, on a farming community close to the university. They will not find that, read that, understand that. So you really have to explain how it will happen. Okay. And then now they've also added this question about the 3 SDG principles. I really want you to answer it. It kind of got lost in the proposals in previous calls. You have these 3 principles. You have 3,000 characters, so you could say maybe about 10 lines per principle. How are you working on this, leaving no one behind? And I copied some of these expectations from the call. Ensuring that vulnerable and marginalized populations are included and benefit and at least taken into account in the analysis. Interconnectedness, as I said, the idea of it all, everything hanging together. It's about interdisciplinarity, because you might need a lot of different skills and perspectives to understand a certain topic. Also, this holistic context analysis. Do you have a broader view, and do you look at, let's say, a complex system instead of a simple causal relation for certain challenge? And then, very important here for VLIRO-S, these 2 transversal themes, you can really talk about them here, gender equality and environmental sustainability. And then the third one, multi-stakeholder partnerships, but here they turned into coherence, multi-institutional partnership. That is, if you want several, more than 2, let's say, higher education institutions involved, and MSP, multi-stakeholder partnerships. How is your project going to deal with that? This country reference framework, I mentioned it here, it's in the call. Every country, except for the Palestinian authorities, every partner territories, every country has such a document. And what it does is, among others, it lists some of the actors that are active in the country and the topics they're active in. So it can help you to go through that and see what you can find. Also, this is also what we can help with, find out if there have been other VLIRO-S projects on the topic in the past, and see if you can find some kind of link there. What VLIRO-S expects, as I mentioned in the call, is a structural collaboration with at least 1 non-academic actor. So this multi-stakeholder partnership. Try to find a non-academic actor that wants to work with you and that is an important stakeholder in your topic. And you can explain a bit here, but it comes back at the multi-stakeholder issues. This is a checklist that VLIRO-S has provided. If you want to check a little bit whether you're keeping these guiding principles in mind, it's just a bit of a resource. You can look at it when you like, but it starts with good understanding of what is at stake, and a good context analysis of the actors, of the complexity of the topic, of any kind of barriers and any issues that make people vulnerable in a certain context. You can check it here if you like. Okay, then the third module is about the organization of your project. How are you gonna work, let's say? And as you said, there is this Excel annex where you can put all the members of the team, but also their role and their contribution to the project. So here you have limited space, so it's good to focus on structures and complementarity, like, okay, it's better for this person or this group to do that, and because they're strong at it, and they will do this. What kind of responsibilities are given to different people in the project? But keeping in mind, this is really important, a certain balance in decision making. What VLIRO-S definitely does not appreciate is a situation where, for example, a Flemish professor would You would put here in the organization, okay, Flemish professor coordinates a project, he takes all the decisions about the research, and the work is being carried out by researchers in the partner country. You really want to do this decision making together to show that it is shared and that there is clear ownership on both sides. Really put the emphasis on it because it's important. It's one of the also conditions for a successful project, but also important for a selected project. Okay, there is also one smaller question on scholarships. Won't go into too much detail. It's good to know PhD funding is very exceptional in a short initiative because it's short, because it only has 2 years. So that doesn't appear very often, but maybe you would be selecting a short-term scholar or a master scholar, it's possible, or any local scholarships. Then it's good to mention how will you select them in a fair way, perhaps taking into account if you have if there are any, let's say, balances to be created, if you have a lack of female doctoral scholars in the institution that you try to correct this, all these kind of things can be taken into account. Maybe that's also good to mention when it comes to the gender equality issues. VLIROS works with the 3 fixes model, and you can think about it in that way as well. So fixing, let's say, the numbers is one thing. So that's about, depending on what you have most, but for example, more women as teaching staff, to balance it, to arrive at balance. Also fixing the knowledge, so making sure that when you're doing research, you pay attention to gender differences, and then fixing the organization if there would be mechanisms or policies that should be put in place. Yeah, that is not expected of every project, that's not what I'm saying, but these are the different ways you can think about taking along this gender equality, and that's the framework VLIROS uses. Okay. Then the next module is about stakeholder management. You see that they now ask for 5 key stakeholders. It's important. This is external to the project team. Don't mention anyone in the project team there. That's not the idea. I have some examples in the next slides of what you can do. This is both the beneficiaries or end users of your project and any strategic partners that you have. They're all stakeholders. And normally these partners are crucial elements of your uptake strategy, of the way you want to have an impact outside of the universities or higher education institutions' walls. But the strategy, so make it concrete. How are you going to deal with each other? It can be all kinds of methods or formats. VLIROS has said in the past that they appreciate working with, for example, an advisory board, having, let's say, putting the system in the room. That's how they sometimes say it. Everybody that has a stake in a certain challenge or a certain topic, putting them together and sitting together once every 3 months, for example, and looking at the progress of the project. That's an option, but it can be in many ways, and it depends really on your project proposal. As I said before, if you do involve people or organizations, make it a genuine involvement. Don't just mention them because it's good to mention them. If you're not going to do anything with them, it will be clear enough. And a good mix is also very appreciated. Might be mentioning only government institutions or only civil society or only end users might not be ideal. Just so you see, these are from different projects, stakeholders, but as you see, these examples that I put here, it's both can be research institutions outside of the university, can be government, all kinds of councils and levels, national, regional, local, the community themselves, here the community and the children that participated in the research were considered stakeholders. And then you mentioned how you engage with them, or civil society associations. That could be private sector, it could be anything that's relevant for you, but that's a bit the way you can mention them. Okay, now we're at coherence. What is it about? It is about other actors that are also active in your topic, and in the context. VliegOS, they refer to internal coherence. That refers to other VliegOS funded activities, and it's important for them that you're not working on a certain topic in a certain country and another project has been doing the same 2 years ago and you don't know about it. That's really yeah, a negative point for them. That's why I've put this link here to the VliegOS project database where you can also have a look. We can also help you, of course. You can have a look at the country reference framework. There is this link that I also mentioned before to ideas from other Belgian actors for certain countries and topics. You can have a look at all that. And it only makes your proposal stronger if you can show what they're looking for is synergy and complementarity. As say, okay, we know that they do that, we add this to it, or they have been doing that and they can help us now with this and we can learn from them, etc., etc., etc. That makes you a strong proposal. But as I said here, not the place for your own previous collaborations. There is room for that at the end of the proposal. If you have been working together on the topic, then you can mention it later. Okay. Planning and budgeting. So since a few years, next to the budget that you will make up in an Excel format in detail with everything you will be spending money on, you also get the opportunity here to explain your budget, to defend it. Why is this needed? Why is it a good value for money? Especially, I will say later on that VliegOS considers a kind of maximum for personnel costs and also for investment costs. They want to keep that relatively limited, but if you want to do more than they have in mind, than this 25% that they have in mind, you can explain it here and defend it, and that's really possible. There can be very good reasons to want that, but then you explain it here. If there is any kind of co-financing from any kind of site, do mention it here, always appreciate it. And if there are different, if there are more than the 2 basic partners, and you want to divide budget, then it's also good to really make that clear here, because that doesn't appear that clearly from the Excel budget. Okay. It is not as much, let's say, making copying your budget into this question and that's that, because we see that quite often. You really want to explain a little bit, why do you make these choices? So yeah, it's an opportunity as well. Okay, then monitoring. You will be asked, so when the project is selected, you will be asked to report every year on a certain number of indicators. For example, like the number of articles that have been published, or the number of master students that have obtained their degree. That is very standard for every project, but of course that doesn't say a lot about the success of your specific project, the change you have in mind. So that's something you can think about yourself. And it really makes it very concrete how you see success, and it's very interesting for the selection committee. Like, okay, for example, you want to improve water quality in a certain lake. okay, after 2 years or after 5 years, after 10 years, how could this be measured? How could it be measured that the water quality has increased? Okay, you put that here, and try to make this interesting. Indicators that really tell you something about a change that has taken place. Like, for example, things like these publications, etc. They don't really say that much about the success in terms of the sustainable development that FleetOS wants to see. Okay, they ask for both these kind of monitoring indicators during the project. How can you keep track of things that are going well, and also at the end of the project, how can you, let's say, prove change? Okay, and then this I think final question about learning and steering. Show that you have learned from the past, any kind of past experience, like you've been working together before, you've had a project before, you have already submitted this proposal and you're doing it again. Actually, they say, okay, if this is a first-time project, question can be left open, but I would suggest to not leave the question open. In many cases, there have been some kind of experiences. One of the partners has already been working on the topic, or with certain stakeholders. This is really a point where you show that you have been learning, that you're not a beginner, because this is also a typical thing for the theory of change methodology. The theory of change is never finished, never finalized, never perfect. You keep learning, you keep improving. So this also shows that that's what you're doing. Okay. Then, okay, there are some mandatory annexes. The promoters, so at least 2 promoters, need to add their CVs, and you also need an endorsement letter of the partner institution or partner institutions, where in this letter a certain level of authority, let's say at least at the faculty level, so the dean or whatever the situation is, at least the dean, preferably maybe the president or vice chancellor, can endorse this project, say, okay, we support this project, and the promoter here is a member of our staff, and we hope that this can go through, and give our full support to it. This is a mandatory annex. Optional annexes can be letters of support from stakeholders or any other institutions that will be involved, but are not full partners. So this is something you can also add, but you don't have to. It strengthens a bit, let's say, the engagement, the involvement of other stakeholders. Okay. Maybe because I've been talking for a long time, is any questions? So this was really about the, let's say, the main part of the work, the Word document. Are there any questions now about that that you'd like to ask? Not directly? Okay, then we carry on.
I have a quick question.
I think we can carry on. Okay, this Annex 1, I mentioned it before. I'll quickly show it to you. Yeah. This is some general information. Still good to know the title. And then there's this CRS sector code. At this moment, I just forgot what CRS stands for, but you can look here, all these possible topics. I think on the submission tool, there is also a document where you can look into a bit easier to find it. Otherwise, you search through this to find what is relevant for your project, what code you want. It doesn't matter for selection or anything. It's for, let's say, for FleetOS when they are archiving the projects or any kind of that. the main SDG your project is contributing to, and an additional SDG. Often there are more, but you choose something. It's also just for how to register the project. And as I said, the team members, names, the role in the project, that's the formal role, you promoter or co-promoter, just a team member, email address, nationality, gender. Institution is good to mention. They have a list of all the institutions that they know, but maybe yours is not in there, and then there's a free field for that. A department or unit, discipline, what function does this person have, experience and contribution to the project, and a link to the CV, but this is only mandatory for the promoters. Okay. You will notice that there are quite some instructions here from VliegOS, technical things, but it can cause issues if you don't follow them. For example, leaving any row empty between two lines, it causes problems when you're uploading this to the submission tool, or changing or deleting anything that is currently in there. So be careful with that. You can have a look at it, respect the template, or things break actually. Yeah. That's on team members. Then activities. Every activity that you want to do, you mention it here in the description, who is responsible for it, what domain does it belong to, of the 6 domains that we mentioned before, research programs, methods, etc., outreach, and then when it will take place. Can be more than one. These are semesters, half years, and you fill that in. Okay. Yeah, that's what I wanted to show. Annex 1, and then it's something you can upload to the submission tool. About budget and the financial aspects, maybe a few words. The total budget goes up to 70,000 euros. That means that direct costs, so what you can spend on activities, is this amount of 63,000 and something euros, because part goes to the coordination costs, a fixed amount limited to 5% on each side. So that means if you have, for example, 2 higher education institutions in the partner country, this 5%, it doesn't change, but you need to agree on how to divide it. If you need to make these kind of agreements, also mention it in your proposal, in the budget part, where you can write about the budget. These are the kind of clear agreements that show that you've been discussing, that you have been preparing, and that you agree on that, because this can be sensitive issues otherwise. As I said, VliegOS says it is a good practice to not spend more than 25% on personnel, on staff costs, that is also service contracts, and investments also maximum 25%. As I said, it's an indicative maximum. It's a good practice, so it's not a hard line. It is not forbidden to put more than that in your budget, but then maybe you will get some questions. We have the feeling that the selection committee doesn't really look very much at the budget. It's more afterwards, if your project does get selected, VliegOS might ask you some additional questions and maybe ask you to change certain things. If you're thinking about the flexibility in this project, or if you're worried, like if I put it in that year, is it fixed? Or it is very, very flexible. You can underspend in a year, you can overspend in a year. Overspending, of course, then you need to find some kind of pre-financing, but just to say that it's very flexible. Also between the lines, if you're putting an amount in the operational costs now, you wanted to switch during the project to a scholarship, it's possible. There's really some flexibility. So don't worry too much when you're making the budget. Make it convincing and a correct budget, but it's not written in stone. What I just very basically, because we cannot go into all the financial guidelines and expectations of VliegOS, but As you may have noticed, there are different budget lines that you will put your activities and costs in. The investment costs, operational costs. Investment is about buying equipment that costs more than €1,000 a piece, and with a sustainable use. Then operational costs like travel and mobility and consumption goods and all these kind of things. Personnel costs, salaries and topping up. Scholarship costs if you want to give people a scholarship to obtain a certain degree or a certain training. And then these coordination costs that I mentioned. I put the link here to Vliegewest financial framework with all the details about it. But for this also, yeah, make use of, let's say, our support and any questions that you have. You can ask us as well and send draft budgets, and we will give comments and help you figure it out. Okay, maybe one thing that I should say, there are no personnel costs for staff in Flanders at the higher education institution in Flanders. So that's maybe a crucial element. If people didn't realize that yet, please keep it in mind. Okay, we have the budget format here. Yeah, I can quickly have a look at it. Maybe it will make it a little bit less impressive. You only have to fill in yellow bars. It's the same in the other annex, but that might help. So what you see here, we're now in the overview. All these figures will be filled in automatically if you start filling in the data in the investment cost. What kind of equipment do you want to buy? What will it cost, etc. Operational costs. What do you need? Personnel costs. Here in personnel costs, it's important to give some additional information about what is this person going to do. But what is also important, if you can mention what will happen then to this position after the project, that will help a lot. That will make it stronger. And the scholarship costs. Okay. But yeah, I would say have a look at it. If something's not clear, if you're in doubt about something, yeah, you can have a look at the Vliegewest scholarship framework, but also just contact us if you're in doubt. It's better to do that than to start from the wrong assumptions. Okay, just very minor point when you're budgeting for international mobility, because that's almost always part of the budget. It's about door-to-door transport. So you take the train and then the plane and then a bus, I don't know, that is reimbursed by so you can put it in the project. And for visits, like you visit each other for a week or something, we work with a per diem, so a fixed amount per night spent in the partner country. There's a link to the amounts there. You can use that. Every country has its own amounts. And the hotel is also reimbursed. Just to give you an idea. When it's about local mobility, you can use the real costs of transport and accommodation. And a local per diem, that means when team members are working outside of the city of the institution, they go outside and they have certain costs. You can use a maximum of €35 per day in a local per diem. That's because it's something that comes back in most projects. We want to share it, but there's more, of course, but this can give you an idea. What we wanted to do, just as examples, for 3 projects that have been selected, show you a bit this division of budget. So what a budget might look like. So here you see, okay, the orange part, the coordination cost is always more or less the same. It's fixed. And here you have about 23% in personnel costs, and 68 are the operational costs. So operational costs are almost always the largest part of the budget. Sorry, this is the 23% are investment costs, yeah, not personnel costs. So they made ICT investments. That's what you see here, the 23%, and international travels were a big part in operational costs. You can also see the breakdown here. That's an example. You see here 57% of the budget goes to international mobility and subsistence. Can be the case. Another example, for example, is this, where you also have some small personnel costs and very limited investment costs. I won't go into more detail, but for example, here you have a project with 35% personnel cost, which is more than what Vlieghuis normally expects. But it was well explained, the project was selected. Vlieghuis asked questions on sustainability, like, okay, then what will happen after the project if you spend so much on staff costs? And the questions were answered and the project started. So it's not impossible. And we also advise you to limit these steps to stay in line with expectations, but it might be a vital need. So, okay. Okay, one of the final points, so this online tool, you can have a look at it already. This is the link. If you don't get access, contact your ICOS, so that's the people in our team. They can give you access, and then you can already start making your file for your project. What we really want to advise against is to visit this submission tool in the last day before the deadline or the last 5 minutes before the deadline, because that is guaranteed frustration on everybody's side and a real possibility of not being able to submit the project. So it has happened at 5 o'clock, they close this tool. So if it's not there, then the chance is gone and all the work has been for nothing. Again, in general, contact us as soon as possible if you have concrete ideas, if you're working on something, if you have any kind of worry, just don't hesitate. And then these general tips, I thought they might be nice. It comes from a presentation by our colleagues at the research coordination unit or department. This is what we have done now. Before you start, have a look at all the questions, the entire template and the annexes. That helps you also to plan. Read the instructions, so the questions really carefully, also in these Excel annexes. Try to follow them. Or something not clear, just let us know. This one is important. Be nice to the reviewers. They're not experts in your field, so make sure they can understand. Make sure it is, let's say, almost pleasant to read, and not too many long sentences or difficult concepts. If you can put some layout, some structure in your text, it makes it much lighter to review, because they get a lot of projects and you don't want to annoy them. Yeah, this kind of active phrasing, no hesitation, no, I think we should, no, we will. It's the kind of language you want. Avoid duplication, as I said before. Put the right thing under the right question. Yeah, very often you put a lot of time in thinking about the direct project content. And then you fill in the template and you know, oh no, there are also these annoying questions about stakeholder management and coherence and SDG principles. So make sure that you keep them in mind as well in your planning. We very often get drafts where these questions are not filled in yet, and that's perfectly fine. Please send us your drafts as soon as possible. But it shows a bit that these are the kind of things that come at the end. Actually, it's good to already think about them from the start as well. As I said, the first thing people read will be the summary and the context analysis. So make sure they're extra interesting, tempting. In the summary, don't say too much about how you will do it, but more about the why and for who it is important, what it is about. Not too much about the technicalities about how and the methods, etc. That's not that necessary there. It's also very limited space. And then always try not to be vague. That is one of the things we read often in the negative points in the selection committee. It is too vague. It is not clear. Be concrete. That has a risk because that's a choice. You have to, let's say, show your cards if you're concrete and specific. But it is important for people who want to understand what you want to do. Okay, and it takes some discussion because once you get concrete, you may notice that you're not really thinking the same way, and then you need to talk about it. But that's the way it is. All right. So I hope I didn't kill you by now. I want to stop this presentation. If you have questions that haven't been answered yet in any kind of way, please post them now. We will share the presentation and annotated version, etc., and a recording. But this is a final opportunity to ask any big questions. Everybody is dead. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed something at the beginning. I have a question. By the way, thank you, Roland, for the nice explanation and the overview of the whole models on the Word document. But my question was, you show a a dashboard with the SDG
is someone
index.
saying something? Because I can't hear it.
Yeah.
Oh,
hello?
Sorry, I didn't hear it. Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
I completely missed it.
Okay, that was a question regarding the dashboard showing the SDG index. Where do we or how can we use it, or in which model can we take those numbers into account?
Yeah, I would use it mostly for the context analysis. So the very first question, that would be the place to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Lan? Do you hear anything? I can't hear you, Lan, if you're saying something. Sorry. No. Lan, I can't hear you saying anything. If you are speaking and it doesn't come through, please put it in the chat perhaps, and then I'll ask Alina Alexandra to speak.
Thank you, Roland. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I just want to ask, so I'm a little bit not sure, for example, how the budget will work for the project. So I mean the process. For example, we have a budget for several activities, and we need some equipment for measuring, for example, urban conditions. And then how that will work. So we have to first make the activities, and then you make the allocation of the money for the budget of the activity, or how it will work. So I don't have any idea. I'm very unsure about that part.
I think that would be the natural way to go about it. So you discuss the activities in detail, and then you're going to try, based on very much your knowledge of prices and costs and previous experiences, how much will it cost, and then you're going to start making that puzzle maybe in the budget template and see where you arrive at. Very often you need to shift a little bit when you say, okay, this we're already at the budget, maybe we have to take something out, or you can add something. but yeah, it starts with a clear view on what you want to do in quite some detail. For example, in a workshop, how many people do you want there? What kind of costs will you have to be making for them? That's what it comes down to. FleurOS normally expect quite some detailed budgets. So it would be about, okay, a 100 people workshop for 2 days. And then so we will be paying for them the catering and a room and that, and it amounts to this more or less. Of course, it's a budget. If afterwards turns out that this is not really the exact cost, then that's not a disaster. Does it help a little bit or not really?
Yeah, but so it's my question is about the process. So, for example, we need to make some activities. So, how you allocate or you send the money for doing those activities?
Okay, okay.
We
Once
have
you
to do it
have,
first.
okay, once the project is selected, etc. Okay, well then once a contract has been signed, and the budget arrives at KU Leuven, a certain amount will be sent to the partner institution to start funding the activities. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't
Okay,
understand
thank you,
the
Roland.
question. No, sorry.
Thank you very much.
Lan, I just see this question. Is it possible for the project to target more than one domain? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There any other questions? No. Okay, it's almost magical, but it's 4:30 exactly, and we're ready. So thank you all very, very much for your attention. You will receive an email with yeah, and yeah, I saw that. I will contact you later. Yes, yeah, I will do that. No worries. Okay, then goodbye, everybody. Thank you for being here. And yeah, I wish you all the best and good luck with your proposals. And let us know. Keep in touch. Okay. Bye bye.